Hi everyone, this is a recap of the image that we did in the Guelph-Humber Web Design course AHSS3080. We're going to use Photoshop to create an old-looking Polaroid image. We're going to use different tools to make that happen. So first off, I opened the image that I'm using in Photoshop, just an old picture of my dog. And then next we're going to create a new window altogether where we're going to do most of the background work on the back of the Polaroid. So to do that, File, New. We're going to call this Polaroid. We're going to make the width 500 pixels. Make sure you have it set to pixels, and make sure the background and the height 500 as well, and the background transparent. So that creates a new window altogether. Now we have two different windows going. We're not going to come back to this until a little bit later. All of the work now is going to be inside the Polaroid layer. We're going to use the guidelines to create the outside edges of the background of the Polaroid, as well as using guidelines to make the outside edges of the photograph itself. To do that, make sure that you have the rulers set to turned on. You should be able to see the rulers at the top. If not, just go to View and make sure that Rulers is clicked. The version of Photoshop that I'm using right now is a little bit older than the ones that are installed on the computers at the university, but it's still the same process. You should see the scale go from 0 to 500 at the top and the side, because there's 500 pixels wide and tall that we created when we made the new document. If it's a different scale for you, just right-click on the ruler and make sure that it's set to pixels. So to start out, we want to make the outside edges with guidelines of the outside edges of the Polaroid itself. I'm going to click and drag over to create a guideline, and I'm going to set it up at 100 pixels away from the left and from the right. So from here to here is 100 pixels. You can see I dropped it at the 100 mark, and then from this side the edge is 500, but I'm going to bring this one in to 400 pixels. From the top to bottom, I'm going to make a little bit taller image, not quite square, so I'm going to drag it down to 50 pixels, and at the bottom I'm going to drag it down to 400 pixels. So this gives me the footprint of the overall size of the Polaroid. Next, what I want to do is create a small square to put the image itself in. To do that, I'm going to leave about 20 pixels on each edge. So if this one is at 100, I'm going to bring it into 120. I can't quite see exactly where that is, so I'm going to zoom in using the magnifying glass, and then I can click the arrow again up here, the move tool, and drag this to 120 pixels. I'm going to double click the hand tool to zoom back out, and then drag another one to 380 pixels. I'm going to zoom in again to make sure that it's at the right spot, and drag it over to 380. Double click on the hand, and then do the same for the top. I was at 50 pixels at the top, so I'm going to bring this one down to 70. So now I have a nice 20 pixel border around the left, top, and the right. On the bottom, I'm going to leave a little bit more room because we're going to write some text underneath. So I'm going to drag another guideline down to the 340 pixel mark, and I'm going to zoom in to make sure that it's nice and consistent. So after every major step, I like to save it just so we don't lose our work. I'm going to save it inside the Polaroid folder. Okay, so up next I want to create the background, the white background of the Polaroid itself, and to do that I'm just going to use a white brush to fill in this entire image. But actually, before I do that, I want to make sure that we name our layers properly. So think of layers as different sheets of glass that you're painting on. Every layer is clear, but you can put images on parts of it. Double click the layer. I'm going to call this background, and then I'm going to start painting on it. To do that, I'm going to grab the paintbrush tool, make sure that I'm on the right layer, and I want to change the size and the hardness of the brush. So to do that, just right click and you'll be able to change the diameter, so the overall size, and the hardness. The hardness is the crispness of the edge. In this case we want the hardness to be at 100 because we want a nice crisp edge. If I started painting right now, it would give us a dark black background. That's not what I want. I want a white background, so I'm going to press Ctrl Z to undo that, and then I'm going to change the color, in this case to white. So I double click, and then I choose something that is white. So you can see 255, 255, 255 for the red, green, and blue values. Now when I start painting, fill up the most of the image, but what I really want is I want the edge to be on the outside of those guidelines. To do that, I'm going to use the marquee tool to draw a rectangular marquee, and I'm going to use the guidelines that we just created as the outside edges. So now everything inside these dotted lines is selected. If I deleted that, it would delete the opposite of what I'm trying to get. All I'm trying to do is get the get this rectangle to be white inside, and in this case it's white on the outside. So I'm going to undo that. What I want to do is I want to select the inverse of this. So if you go up to Select, Inverse, now you can see it added another line, another dotted line on the edge. So this part, this outside edge is selected, and then I can delete that, and then that's exactly what we want. I'm going to press Ctrl D to get rid of my selection, and then next I'm going to start to create the inside image that will end up being the photograph. To do that, I'm going to create another layer. I'm going to call this layer Photo Background. And what I'm trying to create on this photo background layer is a mask. We're going to use this mask to cut out the photo later on, but to start we're just going to create the mask to make that happen. So in a really similar way, we're going to choose the paintbrush tool again. I'm going to create just a red background. It doesn't matter the color, but we're going to use a red background just so it's easier to see. Make sure I'm selected on the photo background layer and not the first layer. So right now there's nothing on the photo background layer, but I want to create a red background, a red mask, and then I'm going to cut away the pieces we don't need. So remember, this interior edge, these interior guidelines is what we're trying to use. So if I use the marquee tool to draw a rectangular marquee right on that edge, I want to delete the outside of that. So we're going to repeat the same step as last time. We're going to select the inverse. So if we go to Select, Inverse, and then press Delete, that deletes the outside edge. I'm going to press Ctrl D to get rid of the selection, and this starts to give you an idea of what we're looking at. So the white part is the background of the Polaroid, and then the red is going to be a mask that we use to show where the image is going to go. I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to create a new layer called Photo. And this layer is going to be the layer that the actual photo comes in on. I'm going to go back to the first document that I opened, which was the photograph. So I'm away from Polaroid now and back to the photograph. And I'm going to cut a piece of this photo out and then paste it into the other document. So I'm going to use the rectangular marquee tool again and just get a rough idea, doesn't have to be perfect, of the area that we're going to use. And then I'm going to copy this by either pressing Ctrl C or going Edit, Copy, and then I'm going to paste it into the other document that we're working in. So Polaroid, and then make sure that we're on the photo layer. And I'm going to press Ctrl V or Edit Paste, and you'll see that it takes up way too much space. So what we have to do is we have to shrink this image down. I'm going to zoom out. You can press Ctrl and the subtract sign on the keyboard, or you can use the zoom out tool by clicking here. and then we have to resize this image. If you go Edit, Transform, Free Transform, you can see that it gives you, it highlights the photograph for you and gives you little corners that you can drag. If you start dragging the image and you just freely drag it, it'll compress it and it'll stretch the image. I'm going to undo that. What you want to do is you want to hold down Shift to make sure that it constrains it and keeps the same aspect ratio, so that just means that it doesn't stretch it. I'm going to get it close to where I want it, then I'm going to double click the hand sign, apply the transformation, double click the hand to zoom back in, and now it's a little bit closer to the actual size that we need. One problem though is I can't see the background anymore, can't see all the work we did underneath. So to be able to see what we're doing underneath, I'm going to make this layer transparent just temporarily. So the photo layers that we're working on, I'm going to reduce the opacity to about 80%, give or take, and then I'm going to do my final resizing. Again, Control T, hold down Shift. I want to make sure that I'm covering all of the red area, because we're going to use that red area to cut out the image. And center it to a good spot. Move it around, and that looks good to me. I'm going to press Enter to apply the transformation, and then bring the opacity back up to normal. You can turn off and on the visibility of the layers, so I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to turn this off. The photo is still there, we're hiding it for now. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to use this red background as a mask to cut out the photo. To do that, I'm going to get the magic wand tool, and you want to make sure you have the magic wand tool selected, not the quick magic wand tool, just the regular magic wand. Highlight the photo background layer, make sure you're working on that layer, and we're going to select everything that's red. So if you click that, it'll automatically, the magic wand tool picks up the different colors, so it's going to pick up everything that's red and give you an image mask. We're going to use that mask to cut out the photo. So once I have that selected, I'm going to go back to the photo layer, I'm going to turn the photo layer back on, and then I'm going to cut out the inverse. Select, inverse, and now if I press delete, it deletes everything that's not within that mask that we created. I'm going to press Control D to deselect, and then the next step I'm going to do is put some text underneath on the bottom. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call this layer text. And then I'm going to use the text tool, capital T here, to write something on the bottom. So if I highlight all of the text here, right now it's huge and a script that I don't want, and it's white, which won't show up on this white background. So after I have everything highlighted, I'm actually going to center, justify the text. I'm going to change the color of it to something dark gray. And I'm actually going to change the font as well, or the font size. That looks good. And then I can drag it over to the center. The last thing we're going to do is add some depth to the photo itself, and we can do that by applying a style or a blend to the layer. On the background layer, so that's the white piece here, I'm just going to right click, and then under blending options, we're going to create a drop shadow. So if you click on drop shadow, it creates an automatic one for you, but let's modify it a little bit. So just click on the word drop shadow, and you can change the distance, make it a little bit closer, change the opacity, and maybe we'll change the size a little bit. So now we have created a Polaroid image using a background, using some image masks to cut out the photograph. We're going to save this one last time. So now we've saved the Photoshop document, the .psd, as polaroid.psd, and then finally we're going to save the image for web as the PNG transparent file. File, save for web and devices. Make sure that you have PNG24 selected, 500 pixels by 500 pixels. Save that, and we're going to call this polaroid.png, and then that's it. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments or email me at my email address.